Good afternoon, this is Bob Iaccino coming to you from the CME Group trading floor in Chicago, talking metals, talking about a copper product whose fall continues. Copper is now down over 20% from its June highs. That puts it in an official bear market. It's difficult with commodities in terms of a bear market because especially something like copper would happen with crude oil as well. When that 20% level comes in at the level where you're entering an area called deficit pricing, where the price to mine is actually higher than the price of the contract, there's kind of a natural floor, and that's a little bit of what we saw today. I'm not saying the buying we saw in toward the end of the day was based off of the deficit situation that we're approaching, but we did get buying that came in. We finished down about 34 basis points at about 2.6015. We got all the way down to 2.566, which put it down 1.4% on the day, and then finished down 34 basis points. Some negative news for copper, considering that China consumes about 50% of the world's copper, both in smelting and in construction. China approached the WTO asking for an authorization to sanction the U.S., which again is the way the rest of the globe would consider trade sanctions and tariffs to be done appropriately. So when they're asking for permission to do that, they seem to be going about the course where the rest of the world would at least politically agree with China's path. That tells you that we could be in for an even longer trade war than some people might be speculating on today as the U.S. and the EU makes progress. Speaking of the EU, the talks between the U.S. and the EU continue, and we're getting very positive feedback out of that. That could potentially put a bid to copper, but the EU is just not a big enough consumer of copper. It would have to be that the sort of spillover effect from potentially Canada signing on to the agreement between the U.S. and Mexico, and then the U.S. and the EU sign, and then the last one to get done would be the U.S. and China, last of the majors anyway, and then that could potentially put a floor into copper. We could have gotten a little bit of sentiment buying from that, but down over 1% earlier in the day, finishing down just over 0.25%. This is Bob Iaccino talking copper futures from the CME Group trading floor in Chicago.